joining us for this conversation that we'll have this hour on impact. Impact is a big thing. Sometimes when we look at it, we're not quite sure where it does come from, or how you can actually make sure that it actually goes beyond just the word, but that feeling it in our societies. Kihara Maina is the regional CEO of I&M Bank, and we're talking about the impacts that the I&M Foundation has had over the last 5 years. He's here with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Very good, very good.
Welcome to the hot seat of the Situation Room. I don't believe that you've graced the seat yet, but you're here this morning and we're glad that you've done that.
Yes, this is my first time. Glad to be here.
Thank you for doing this. We're going to welcome you, as we normally do, with a proverb as we go to a different African country every week. Dennis is going to share that with you, and we'd like to hear your interpretation of that proverb.
Yeah. So the country is well known over its Ubuntu philosophy. I am because we are, right? It is also a country that is considered to be a rainbow nation. It's a rainbow nation because of its diverse cultural diversity. We're talking about South Africa, a country that is considered to be one of the powerhouses as well in Africa due to its economy that is mostly fueled by mining, talk about finance and culture, rich culture in that country. And also home to a lot of Nobel laureates. So we're talking about Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, and many others. But then again, it is also a country, if you look at its history, especially when it comes to apartheid regime and what that did to the people of South Africa, a sensitive and painful part of the country, even today. But let's go to the proverb. A small pot takes after the big one. A small pot takes after the big one. How would you interpret that?
That's an interesting one. I can think of several things. Mm-hmm. Well, you mold pots out of either steel or clay, and if you're working with the materials, you are not going to have just enough, right? You could make the big one and have leftover and make a second one. But perhaps the more literal and wider interpretation would be that, whoever comes first has a responsibility to show an example to the people who are coming after on how to do things. So whether it is in life, you've got your parents who you mimic and learn from them. So I'd prefer that interpretation. Yeah.
Well put, well said. Leadership
Fantastic.
is key.
Absolutely. So, Kihara, tell us a little bit about the I&M Foundation. Even as we're looking into 5 years, tell us why, come up with the foundation in the first place.
Great. Well, so the I&M Foundation you could describe as the philanthropic arm of I&M Bank, Kenya. While we're celebrating 5 years, it's not actually a story that began just 5 years ago. This is the more formalized structure that we have used for really what is our journey on impact. If we look back to when this actually started, we used to set aside as I&M Bank, perhaps going maybe 30 years back, 2% of our profits before tax, right? To then do what we'd call our social impact activities. Mm-hmm. And this, as you can appreciate, would be set aside. It's been put in one of the accounts in the bank, and any activities that we are approached to support, we would then fund out of that. But we realized that this is not quite giving us the kind of impact that our founder, SBR Shah, was really looking for in terms of how to really scale the impact of giving. So we mooted the idea of the I&M Foundation back in 2018, got it formally set up in 2020, and this then housed all of the activities that we do under the foundation. Now, to make sure that we have really structured approaches to giving, we actually went through an exercise of defining what our strategy for the foundation would be, right? There's so many areas that you can impact, but we chose to really streamline that so that we can have significant impact on 4 key areas, right? The first one we selected was environmental conservation, right? I think we all appreciate the challenges that we are going through in our times. And we felt that if we could channel funds into that particular space, we could be part of the solution. The second area we focused on was education and skills empowerment. And this really speaks to something that we have been active in anyway over a long period of time. We've supported well over 200 students needy students, bright but needy students to go through high school through partnerships like the Palm House Foundation. And the third area that we looked at was economic empowerment. Now, if you look at the statistics in our country, I mean, I think we have about 3.5 million people formally employed. We've got well over 1 million people getting into the workforce every year. They're not going to be absorbed by formal companies, right? So we have to say, how are we going to support the creation of jobs, entrepreneurship, so that we can actually get people to start their own companies and so on. So skills empowerment was then a key area for us. And that then leads to economic empowerment, right? So you're able to support the creation of jobs. The fourth area is sort of all-encompassing, right? We know that there is still a need to support other areas that are outside those three key areas. So we focused on what we call enabling giving. And this is really about saying, to borrow another proverb, right? If you walk alone, you walk fast. But if you go together, you go far. And the idea was that we can enable others to give. So anybody who's looking to support, for example, the building of a well for their village, if they raise that, we could actually support their funds. So matching the funding that they're doing. But it's also much wider than that. It's really to say, can we encourage other philanthropic ventures, right? So if we are working with another foundation that then doubles the amount of money that we are committing to a particular venture, we have greater impact. So it's really, that last pillar is really about bringing people together. It's the one that, for example, that we use with our employees to say, if you raise funds for your charitable event, we will match that 100%, right? So it really helps with promoting the acts of giving. So that's really the focus areas that we have right now. It's embedded in a wider strategy for the bank, right? And that is really about our sustainability, and we'll come to that in a minute.
Well, I'm curious, two quick questions. So every time, and in this case, when you're talking about making this very strategic move then to have impact on those three key areas that you've mentioned, there is a moment that triggers that thought, then leading to begin a process. What, if you're to take us back to that moment where you felt, let's come up with this idea and have a foundation, then it was born. What was that moment like? And two, a lot of times you have, banks do CSR activities and all that. Why is it so important to then transition from what you would call a CSR committee to a full foundation?
Okay, so I think the genesis of this, as I mentioned, was really, we are a developing nation, right? We was just last year celebrated 50 years of I&M Bank. Through that period, you can imagine the transitions that we have seen in our country, Kenya. And clearly, if you're operating a banking business, you're going to be facing clients who have significant needs to support their business, but you're also seeing a lot of people in society who are not quite making ends meet, right? And I think you have seen the role that the Harambee Spirit, for example, plays in a country like Kenya. This idea that collectively you can do a lot more, that you can actually support each other through difficult times, that those who are blessed with more should be able to give back to society, I think then is what really seeded the idea that we should be setting aside some of the profits that we are making to actually purposely change the lives of others, impact others positively. So that became a practice. It built up that pool of funds. We now needed to really sharpen the impact that we were having on society. And we felt that the best way to do this would be through a vehicle like the I&M Foundation, right? So formalizing it, which also then gives us the opportunity to tap into incentives that are offered by the government. For example, tax-free status, if you can get it, really actually amplifies the impact that you can have, right? So that's really the genesis. But focusing on these three areas was the work of, the initial board of trustees thinking through what is it that we are really about. And clearly education and skills empowerment is really important for us. We understand the transformational role of education in people's lives, in society, and environmental conservation, like I talked about, and so on. So that's really the driver. Now, why is it important? For an organization like a bank, I think you quickly appreciate from your early days that whatever you do has to be sustainable, right? You cannot, for example, gouge your clients, right, through excessive pricing and hope that they'll be there tomorrow to do business with you. You have to think through how you actually partner with them. In fact, if you think through our mission, we say we want to be partners of growth for all our stakeholders. The keyword there is partners, right? Mm-hmm. We are saying we want to work with you, want to partner with you as you grow, because as you grow, we grow, right? Mm-hmm. So this is really then borne out in the activities then of the foundation.
Yeah, so one area that you focus in, which is an important pillar as well, is environment. And that for me is very important because I'm an environment journalist as well.
Great.
So every time I'm using the bypass, immediately you just leave Kibra area. There is that entire stretch that is being fenced, And for a very long time, we used to ask, what exactly is happening here? Why is the government, because no one really knew what was happening, why are we fencing these forests? Because who's going to the forest to know what, to do what exactly? But then again, you go further down towards the Way Bridge and you see the I&M Foundation banner, and we ask the question, why? And now that you talk about it, we talk about environment being such an important core to the country, because even look at what the position the government has taken with regard to that. We have 2 holidays in a year to go plant trees. And you think about it and what the foundation is doing, protecting one of the greatest places in Nairobi, because they say, if you want to enjoy cleanest air, where do you go to? Ngong Road or Karen? And that's specifically because of that forest that I&M is protecting, which brings the question, just how important is environment conservation to I&M Foundation, and what impact have we seen thus far?
Great. So, and it's good that you've noticed the work that has been going on really over the past year at the Ngong Road Forest. So, the project we have there, we call it Imarisha Gong Forest. And the story starts a bit further back, right? Yes, once we decided that we want to focus on environmental conservation, we then realized, of course, that the best way to do this is to work with partners who actually understand these areas. We can provide the money, we can provide the guidance on the things that we want to do, and we want to be able to monitor and control what's happening, but we have to work with partners who are actually skilled in this space. But in roughly 3 years ago, we started thinking about celebrating our 50 years as I&M Bank. And we felt that we needed to have a significant project that we could say, well, we started off in celebration of our 50 years, and this happening through the I&M Foundation. So we looked for partners we could work with, and we considered a couple. that didn't quite pan off because the stakeholders weren't ready, shall I say, to make their commitments and on transparency and of course how we could actually work with them to deliver what we wanted, which is surprising. You expect when people are receiving money that they'll jump at the chance, right? But we then engaged with the Kenya Forestry Services, and they were more than happy to work with us because this is really what they are about. And I was very impressed with the way they then stepped up to say, here are the things that we can do. This is the area that we would like to support. We are keen to really extend this across the country, right? You will have seen the widening presence of I&M, so we know that it is an opportunity for us to engage with communities across the country, and KFS would be a great partner given the work that they do supporting the conservation of forests across the country. But we settled on the Gong Forest. Now, what they outlined to us is that there are several things that can be done. Number one, you mentioned Karura Forest. Yes, it gets 2,000 visitors a day, right? It's kind of bursting at the seams when you now talk about its capacity to support all those visitors. Nairobi needs other green spaces that you can go to for recreation and so on. So Gong Forest was the right space to work on, but it needed a lot of work in terms of rehabilitating the recreational spaces. It also needed to work on the security side, right? One of the challenges that people face when they're going for recreation in spaces like this is, are they secure, right? The first thing, therefore, you want to do is deal with the security. And it was recommended that we fence that part of the forest. And that hence the fence that you're seeing. And this is an electrified fence in keeping, of course, with our conservation focus. It's actually powered by solar so that you can electrify the fence. And the rangers that work in the forest also needed housing and facilities and so on. So we also committed to do that. You also needed to prepare roads and trails within the forest. But I think the one exciting bit that we like about this project is how it also engaged community partners, right? So the scouts that help with cleaning up the spaces, helping to preserve the space, make sure that it's secure and all, actually come from the Kibra community. So they're trained by the rangers and they work together in a community association to actually support this whole effort. And additionally, the restoration of the forest also requires that we get a seedling nursery that can then put in the different types of trees that are going to be used to restore the forest. So it's quite a comprehensive project. It's been going on now for about a year, and we should be spending roughly 180 million shillings to do all of this. And I hope that Nairobi residents will then be able to find a space that they can actually visit and enjoy with their families.
Indeed. Education and opportunity then is one of the big ticket items, one of the areas that you look into, and having been able to support people across the board. How exactly does that play out?
So we have different interventions in this space. I think the signature one is we built an entire school right from scratch, and this was the brainchild really of our founder SBR Shah, who was approached by the St. Anne Order, right? It's a Catholic order, to say we feel that there is an opportunity to create or build a school for girls, right? And this is in Kairi in Mangu. And in typical style, he said, right, you guys get organized, find the space, and we will build the school. So they set about identifying the spaces, consolidated, found 4 or 5 acres, Once they were ready, approached us and we said, okay, fine, let's get started. Let's build a school. Now, they actually paid for the land, but our founder then said, look, this is going to be my gift to you. So he actually refunded them all of the money. And then we now began the process of building the school. So broke ground in I think it was just about a year. We had our first cohort. Now I think we've now seen 2 classes graduate from the school, girls' schools, and they are actually one of the leading schools now in the Mangu area. So it's a really great story. I think we've spent about $2.5 million just investing in all of the aspects of that school, and it also presents an opportunity for our staff to also mentor some of the students, and we've seen mentoring from on different things, finance through to digital services as well. Now, more broadly, it is about working with other partners. I mentioned Palm House Foundation earlier, and this is a very noble idea started by Eric Kimani, who actually also happens to be now our chairman of the I&M Foundation. But we started this engagement with them some time back, and it was a very simple idea. You've got needy students who can't make fees for their school. They've been called to all of the schools. Can we identify them and can we fund them, right? And you pay for the entire 4 years of schooling that they had. That was the 844 system. So we committed, and we have been increasing the number of students that we support. Right now we're supporting 100 students through that program. But we also looked at the tertiary education space, and in partnership with Strathmore University, have sponsored 16, and this is also with the Bhagwanji Raja Trust. This is our founder's foundation, supporting 16 students through university. The really exciting thing there is that they have also taken it upon themselves to also pay it forward, right, by also taking on philanthropic activities. We've got a lady, for example, in Samburu, who's actually now also supporting students in her community to go to school. So you can see education is quite wide-ranging. We've got other initiatives. It doesn't just simply stop at the shall we say, formal side. We're also looking at the skills improvement side. So we've worked with Moringa School, for example, to really support digital skills improvement. And also looking at how we can support other schools. So, for example, the Alliance High School we have a partnership with them. We are promoting giving. This is through the enabling giving pillar and the education pillar as well. And the idea is really to say, if old boys of the school can support needy students, we will match what they are giving, right? And through that program, we've been supporting over 30 students a year in the school. So it's quite wide-ranging, and we welcome other partners to approach us, and as long as it's a well-structured program, we'd be more than happy to support. So I think that really speaks to the opportunity that we see in education. There are others. We are looking at infrastructure, partnership that we are announcing soon with Strathmore on supporting an innovation center, and we'll be gifting them to support that particular innovation center as well.
Okay, let's talk about one of, it's become a buzzword lately, economic empowerment. And when you look at economic empowerment, there's so many key areas, and these key areas that affect, the society, and a lot of these people obviously are your clients. There are also gaps that need to be filled. My question is, under your economic empowerment pillar, how is your foundation then helping communities build sustainability and sustainable livelihoods? Because at the moment, any project or anything that seems to be then addressing any part of the economy is looking at the longevity. It's not just short term. How are you managing this?
Yes, so Dio, that's a key challenge, I'd say. I think I mentioned earlier that we know that jobs are not going to come from the formal sector. It's going to have to come from entrepreneurs that are getting into medium, small, and mid-sized entities. So, taking a step back on how we look at sustainability across the group, we appreciate that to really thrive, you have to do things sustainably. So we have set up our incorporated sustainability into our broader strategy, which we call Imara, and are focusing on how we can impact 50 million lives positively by 2030. There are three pillars under which we do this. The first is enabling last mile financing, right? And we appreciate that there's a lot of work that's being done in driving financial inclusion. So you've got a lot of fintechs, for example, that are coming in. They need banking partners to help them get that last mile done. And that is really providing the financing. So working with partners like telcos, for example, to say, can we support your balance sheet when it comes to lending to individuals who are looking to borrow? That's the first pillar. The second pillar is really on enhancing the quality of life. And that we talked earlier about the environmental side, so recreational spaces and so on. But the third one is about building sustainable businesses. And this is really about how we can support businesses to survive and thrive. And the statistics in this space are always challenging. You hear about a business, a new business, you find 80% or more of new businesses basically fall within the first 2 years. Now, the reasons could be myriad, and they'll range from whether or not there was a strong business idea in the first place, whether there was enough financing to support the business, whether they understood how to do their bookkeeping, for example, so that they are able to separate, profits from revenues and so on. And this is where we then now look to work with partners to say, how do we provide this kind of training? So, for example, working with TVETs, right? And TVETs are a great intervention in this country to say, let's equip the youth, for example, with skills that are going to help them learn how to run a business. It could be an agricultural enterprise. But then once they've acquired that skill, let's then support them with seed capital, right? And say, how do we see you through this initial phase? Eventually, what will happen is they'll get on their feet, and ultimately they'll become a thriving business that we would be happy to bank. So yes, you'd be supporting the initial phases with grant giving, but later on you're actually creating a viable business. And there are many examples of that kind that you can support. So we've worked with the Ma Trust in in the Masai Mara to say, how do we support ladies to create small businesses around bead making and small-scale agricultural enterprises, and impacting over 600 women and families. And we all appreciate that you impact a woman, you actually impact a whole family, and this has been transformational. Some of the stories that came out of those communities were very, very shocking. You find that you're getting early marriages in these communities, and some young girls as young as 10 years old getting married off and getting children,
taken out of school
to do this. So when you provide the opportunity then for them to actually earn a living, an income that is sustainable, then you are actually transforming the society, and you can get these kids to actually go to school instead of being pressed into unwanted marriages. So there are many dimensions to this, but ultimately it's about working with partners that can really help support enterprise.
So we talk about the empowerment that you're doing, but then let's look at it from the aspect of a bank. And your foundation is as good as its client and its people, and the people come from their communities.
Yes.
So here is a question of teaming up with communities to be able to reach many more. And case in point, so let's talk about during the drought in Samburu, where you worked with the community level leaders to be able to reach men. You talk about Ma and how you worked with Matras. You talked about Kibra and the environmental conservation that is happening. Then how you're working with local scouts to be able to shun this. So it is a question of working with local communities for a sustainable future. And one would say the bank is looking at working together with the communities to achieve more. Just how critical is that for the foundation to see success?
So I think the important thing to remember is that you want to make sure that you're preserving dignity when you're supporting people in any way. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you're providing relevant solutions to the community. You cannot know what those solutions are unless you speak to the community leaders, community stakeholders. So whenever we are engaging then in any endeavor, we look to work with the local partners. So that's exactly what happened with the drought situation in Samburu. And the idea was, can we talk to the community leaders? They'll tell us exactly how best we can support and create the right kind of impact. And this has been also evident in partnerships like we've had with on the environmental side, right? So we had a partner like the Kenya Community Development Fund, KCDF. They worked with different stakeholders. So you talk to the chiefs, you talk to the local administration, but also the schools, right? And say, let's set up nurseries, let's plant and grow trees, right? It's important to emphasize that because you can plant a tree, it needs to survive, right? And get these institutions to support this initiative. So with KCDF going through the schools, we saw kids actually, owning their trees, making sure they water it every morning and so on. And we went through a very serious drought a couple of years ago, and that led to significant, challenges with survivability. And we had to also then support the restoration of that planting. So to then achieve the 70% survival rate that we're looking that we eventually got. So it's important to work with community partners and just make sure that we are addressing the right issues. Otherwise, you are not relevant.
So, we talk about these different sectors and you look at, the impact that has been held across board, environment, education, looking into business. And so people's lives, from what you're saying, but also from what we can see, people's lives have been fundamentally altered into a positive direction. It's clear. And when we look at that and you say, because of this, how then do you foster growth and sustainability? Not just for the individuals or communities, but for looking at a macro level now and say this kind of thing, how do you say it will be here and continue to help for years? Because, you see it, things are not, they seem to keep compounding, that there's always somebody who will be in need. There's always an issue that needs to be taken care of. So whereas it is charitable, how can you make sure that it is sustainable into the future?
Yes. So I think the need that we have, particularly in our part of the world, is not going to be a one-shot solution. You can't solve it with just one thing. So you have to work at the enablers of that sustainability, right? One key element, of course, is how do we educate people so that they understand how to how to deal with problems, right? Because education is really at the foundation of all of this. So hence the focus then on making sure that we are providing educational solutions at all levels, right? I think one of the really important interventions that we saw in this country was free primary education, right? And that transforms a country. We've seen it in many different ways. It leads to a significant awareness, but just simply the ability to then build skills, right? You go to school to learn how to learn, right? And you are then able to then employ that knowledge to transform your own society. So education, really important. But it also, endeavors need to be financed, right? And we appreciate that access to finance is a key challenge in not just Kenya, where we have our home business, but in the other countries we operate in, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and in Mauritius. How to solve that is to say, where is this financing mostly needed, right? We have seen financial inclusion improve dramatically when we saw the telcos come into the market, right? And that is commendable. But we still have a lot more to do. If you look at the penetration of banking into the community, we are still at around the 24% mark as banks, if you look at what impact we have as banks. We need to scale that up. The only way we'll really be able to do that is, number one, working with partners so that you can provide the capital that's required to reach the people who need credit. Number two, to provide directly those solutions. So we have done it, for example, with I&M Kenya. We have, through our digital finance solutions, you can now get onto the I&M OTG app, right, and open an account immediately, right? If you have all the documentation you need. Build up your credit profile, and then you'll be able to access short-term loans, for example, digitally, right? You can get a 30-day loan immediately from the bank. But working with partners, you're then able to now scale, right? Because you're dealing with a much larger pool of clients that they have, and you can provide the funding that they need. So providing access to finance is another enabler that is going to help with long-term sustainability, right? Because that business, you ideate, but you still need to finance that business. So I think the other area that is much harder to work on is changing mindsets, right? And there are a lot of businesses that struggle because the playing field is not level, right? And we need to deal with the social aspect of sustainability. And this is, how do we create a better society, a more ethical, a more just society? The best way we see how to do that is by example, right? And making sure that within our organization we are particular about the partners we work with and how they do business ethically, right? So we do not encourage any form of corruption, right? We want to make sure that any suppliers who work with us, any partners that we work with, espouse the same objectives. These are also embedded within the SDG framework that you see with the UN, right? And you want to see that permeate all societies. Now, by working as a bank in this community, supporting clients, supporting different partners, insisting on these standards, I think we can make a small change in this space, and that will then help drive the kind of sustainability that we're looking for.
You said changing the mindset is where there is a big challenge.
Yes,
finding partners who have a clean slate. Books looks clean. The ethics look good. But my question would be, when you're looking for those potential partners, you are ensuring that you have partnerships that obviously work. How then do you align? Because you have a foundation that is very strategic, that is covering these areas that you've mentioned. And you said it's for the long term and it's for impact. But then you also have the banking business with the strategy. How then do you merge these two? You have the foundation that obviously has to align with the bank's broader sustainability and growth strategy. How do you merge these two? Do you find situations where they're almost clashing, or there's a perfect alignment?
So it is perfectly aligned because it's been designed to align, right? Mm-hmm. So I mentioned our strategy, which we call IMARA, right? Mm-hmm. Sustainability is inbuilt into the strategy, right? We appreciate that we need to foster sustainability in all of the different lines of business that we do, right? So if we take, for example, lending in the corporate space, we will look at the environmental, social, and governance aspects of the company that we are lending to. If there are issues that we feel they must address, so for example, it's a company that is a manufacturer and has to deal with effluent, right? We want to see that they're disposing of that effluent responsibly. And we will do an ENS, or environmental and social review, and come up with very clear action points on things that we expect them to do, right, in remedying that situation, which we will track, right? If we find that they're not adhering to it, then we have to part ways, right? Because the idea is that we are promoting sustainability in all its dimensions. So when we are onboarding suppliers, right, we expect them to sign these commitments on how to operate ethically, right? If we find that they're not doing it, we have to separate. We have to part ways, right? I think that kind of no compromise stance is really important, so that people can appreciate that we all have a responsibility to build the kind of society that we want. So it's perfectly aligned, right? Because the foundation then, all of the activities that it works with, the approaches that it takes, the services that it actually gets from the bank in terms of support, right? Your HR, financial services, and so on, are all coming from within the bank. The monitoring is embedded within that, and of course, the board of trustees that runs the foundation will also look at that, and they also understand the broader sustainability strategy that we have, and they'll be looking at whether or not the activities that we're undertaking actually align to that.
Yeah. So it is a question of I&M Foundation is 5 years today, but you're looking at the future. So what's next for the future? That, as well as how then can the public as well just be on board and be part of the greater vision and the impact responsibility that you're giving to the people?
So yes, indeed. 5 years is a good milestone, right? We've done a lot of work in that period of time, and we've also learned a lot of lessons. And I think going forward, it is really to say, how do we execute on the sustainability vision that we have within our strategy? A key focus is going to be on building capacity, right? Particularly with the partners that we work with, so that we can better enable them to really deliver on their own missions as well. We've got a big, I'd say, challenge in the climate space. So this is going to be a big focus area for us in the environmental conservation pillar. And it's going to be not just what we can do within the bank, right, to make sure that our policies really speak to how we do business responsibly, but also within the foundation then to say, how do we partner with entities, companies that are actually executing on that particular vision. But the big area will really be on capacity building, just making sure that we are enabling our partners to grow as they intend, and really to enable the execution of our strategy. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're filling a gap, that's for sure. And I think that's what the initial, when we started off, we see pockets of places in society that needs help. And then is a glaring example of what the private sector can actually do to then put, seams to those holes that we see. Do you see it more out of just charity, but then as duty and responsibility, and then working hand in hand with government when it needs to, or just, this is our part that we are going to play, even as you look at sustainability and growth and then plans into the future?
Yeah, so I think everybody would love to see a society where everyone's thriving, right? And I think the idea that it is charity, yes, it can start out perhaps as charity, but really what you want to do is make it sustainable, give sustainable solutions, right? It's today's a Proverbs day, right? So,
go for it.
It's teach a man to fish, right? Not give them a fish, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're feeding them for a lifetime. So how do you work on core developed solutions to the challenges that we are seeing, right? Because then not only do you give the opportunity to that individual, that entity to survive and thrive, but to also pay it forward, right? Make sure that they're then touching another life as well. So it's, I'd say that we appreciate that to continue growing as an organization, we have to make sure that we're helping others grow. And this is the philosophy that we espouse.
And it's one to live by. Thanks so much for sharing that with us as we mark 5 years, but I guess many, many more years of impact. And we look forward to another 5, another 50.
Yes, indeed. We would really want to encourage other partners to reach out to work with us. Mm-hmm. We are really pleased that we got this platform to be able to talk about our story. Mm-hmm. It's 5 years is really the start of a journey, right?
Indeed.
We want to be able to look back 50 years from now and say, actually, the impact that we had envisaged, we achieved, and actually much, much more.
Kihara Maina is the regional CEO of I&M Foundation and I&M Bank, and has been talking about the I&M Foundation this morning and its impact. Thank you so much for doing that with us this morning. Asante sana.
Asante sana. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I'm at past 10. Thank you for being part of the Situation Room this morning. Have a good day.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.